I want to begin by welcoming the students who are joining us this morning. And Mr. Speaker, the occasion is now mine to offer my contributions to this debate. And I want to begin, like so many of those who preceded me, to commend and compliment the astute and erudite Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh and his competent staff at the Ministry of Finance, and indeed the People's Progressive Party civic government, for preparing and presenting the largest budget in our country's history, $1.146 trillion. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, and it has been said before, but it is worth repeating, that this budget is financed without a single dollar of increase in any taxes and without the imposition of a single new tax. It will be the largest singular injection of money in the economy of this country, in our country's history. The trickle-down impact from top to bottom in one financial year will be phenomenal. And this is only government spending. Just imagine when you add inflows from foreign and local investments and the local private sector. The impact will be unprecedented. This singular budget, Mr. Speaker, is as large as the combined 5 budgets passed by APNU AFC from 2015 to 2018. Those 5 budgets, however, impose an aggregate of over 200 new taxes and fees on the backs of the Guyanese people. And worse yet, Mr. Speaker, after 5 budgets exceeding an aggregate of over $1.3 trillion, there is simply nothing worth that one can point to show for it. This simple and simplistic comparison demonstrates the difference in the philosophy and track record of 2 governments. Mr. Speaker, I can stand here and actually point to projects that are being financed by this budget that the people of Guyana can see, they can feel, and they can look at. I can stand here and point to a new Demerara Harbor Bridge under construction. I can point to a gas-to-shore project under construction. I can point to Cherry Jagan International Airport under construction. I can point to Albion Sugar Estate that was converted from a scrapyard to a grinding factory. I can point to 12 hospitals under construction. I can point to a dozen schools under construction. I can point to a new technical institute at Port Morant under construction. I can point to dozens of housing schemes under construction. I can point to several courthouses under construction. I can point to several water treatment plants across the country under construction. I can point to dozens of major highways and thousands of community roads under construction. I can point to multi-million-dollar complexes that will accommodate our police officers under construction. I can point to new buildings that will house our elderly and our victims of domestic violence under construction. I can point to several stadia under construction. I can point to hundreds of sports grounds under rehabilitation under construction. I can point to tens of thousands of acres of land under new cultivation with new crops right now taking place. I can point to 21,000 Guyanese who have been enrolled on a Gold Scholarship program. I can point to 205,000 school children who will receive a 40,000 cash grant and 5,000 uniform voucher. I can point to 76,000 pensioners who will receive $3,000 per month increase. I can point to 205,000 school children and 76,000 pensioners who are eligible for subsidies to get their eyes examined and $15,000 to get a spectacles purchased. I can point to thousands of pensioners who will get an increase in NIS pension of $8,000. I can point to $40 billion that will go towards subsidizing fuel so that your light bill will not go up and you will get cheaper fuel at the gas stations. I can point to $6 billion that will subsidize the cost of freight charges for imported goods. I can point to tens of thousands of persons who will benefit from an income tax threshold. I can point to thousands of young businesses who will be able to open their businesses and get loans at 3% per annum. I can point to nearly 20,000 women and unemployed persons who will get part-time jobs and earn $40,000 a month. I can point to several hundred persons who will receive $600,000 towards the payment of dialysis treatment. And Mr. Speaker, I can speak here from now until thy kingdom, listing those benefits that will touch and improve the lives of every single Guyanese. Yet you on that side say nothing is wrong with the budget. Nothing is right about the budget. Nothing is right about the budget. That is what we are doing with 1.146 trillion. What did you do with 3 trillion in 5 years? What did you do? Let us review a couple of the projects. One, Durban Park. Durban Park. Right now, I checked it this morning. It accommodates 12 donkeys, 10 horses, and 13 vagrants. And you spend over $2 billion and you build it, and 600 million cannot be accounted for. I went to the roundabout at Visinjan Road, massive project, transformational project, a roundabout, a circle, a concrete circle at the head of Visinjan Road. I can point to 2 pedestrian overpass on the east bank of the Demerara, none of which are working. No, sorry, 3. 3 never worked. And that's on the capital side. That's on the capital side. Let's go. No, they're the Millie Arch and Samakal Billy Arch. I was going to give them the arch, and I take it back. And Samakal Billy Arch to them. And Mr. Speaker, let us go on the current side. I can point to the several ministers who gifted themselves scholarships. A statement of fact. A statement of fact. I don't know why you get upset. $50 million total in scholarships you gave yourself. Then I can point to millions of dollars paid for motion scales that were never delivered. I can point to $12 million being paid to a crony as monthly rent for a house in Alboystown to store drugs. And when we went there, only condoms and lubricants were there.
Honorable AG, I had to refer to a particular legal principle when we are identifying these so-called unnamed people. So please, I'm just cautioning.
Yes, sir. I can point to hundreds of transactions where prime waterfront and commercial properties were gifted to friends and cronies without a public process, and in many instances where a dollar was not even paid. And many transactions were done, many of these transactions were done after you lost a no confidence motion and lost the government. I can point to a parking meter contract for which the government of Guyana is being sued for $100 million US. I can point to a minister who gifted herself contracts from her own ministry but came here this morning to lecture us sanctimoniously. I can point to several ministers whose applications for house lots leapfrogged over thousands of ordinary Guyanese waiting in line. And the Honorable Mahi Paul, he got a house lot without a government being in place. He got a house lot on August the 3rd. Only the president and 3 ministers were sworn in. There was no minister of housing, and he got a house lot on August the 3rd. And these are facts. And these are facts. I can point to nearly $200 million being paid for a feasibility study to be done in relation to the new Demerara Harbor Bridge. $200 million. And this contract was gifted by the sitting minister to a foreign company. No reference to the public procurement process. Cabinet was not even involved, only ex post facto. It came to the attention of Cabinet. And the Honorable Member Mr. Roysdale Ford drew my attention to the Law Reform Commission. And I want to thank him. Because the Law Reform Commission Act was passed in 2016. And in 2017, they rented an office at 59 Robb Street, Border, for $850,000 per month. An entire secretariat was hired, including lawyers, clerks, typists, office assistants, a cleaner, and a driver, totaling $2 million in salaries alone per month. They left office in 2020. They chalked up $100 million in expenses and rent, leaving out furnishings, leaving out electricity, leaving out internet, leaving out telephone. They've chalked up $100 million by 2020, and they never appointed a law reform commission. A law reform commission was appointed by us in 2021. Mr. Speaker, and I can go on, these are selected. These are selected. Don't even let me touch Sarah. It will take me all my time. Mr. Speaker, this budget debate, I come at the lower end. And I come from a particular vantage point. Having listened to nearly 60 speakers presenting, 30 from this side and 30 from the other side. And Mr. Speaker, this budget debate, perhaps more than anything else, establishes and illustrates the great divide between a government and a misplaced opposition. A difference in leadership, a difference in depth, a difference in vision, a difference in competence, and a difference in track record. There is simply no comparison whatsoever. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to leave our school children in doubt when I make those statements. So like a lawyer, I will give my evidence to support. Mr. Speaker, we on this side are speaking about universal secondary education for our children. We have said to this Parliament that 7,000 of our hinterland students in particular, those that we are told can't pass the CXC, they don't know why 7,000 of them don't have seats in a secondary school. And in this budget, we are building the secondary schools for our children. But the Honorable Coretta MacDonald says, we are building too many schools. Too many schools. You see the difference? You see the vision? Mr. Speaker, we are building and modernizing the infrastructure across our country. We are building a modern Guyana. But the Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan complains how much money contractors will make. And he argues that we are creating a new caste system. You see the difference? You see how visionary people think? And you see how they're being pulled down by the other side? I will continue. We are speaking about building a world-class healthcare system and building 12 hospitals across the country. But the Honorable Vince Roy Jordan complains that the hospital that is being built at Bath Settlement in Region 5 is actually being built at Fort Wellington. He is not concerned that the Region 5 getting a brand new hospital and that the people will benefit. He worried that they got up the wrong signboard. The signboard says Bath Settlement, but the construction is actually Fort Wellington. That is the difference between the two governments, between us and those on the other side. And Charles, I'm coming to the Honorable Minister of Sports. The Honorable Minister of Sports stood here and told us of building 5 stadia across the country. and refurbishing 350 sports grounds. And the Honorable Flu Best stood there and expressed deep worry that a dancing class at the Cultural Center was cancelled. A dancing class at the Cultural Center was cancelled. Check the Hansard and you will see that I'm correct. Mr. Speaker, the entire world is impressed with our oil and gas sector. The entire world is impressed with our oil and gas sector. The international indicators have ruled that we have the 10 fastest growing economy, largely because of that sector. Young Sherwood Holder stood there and he said the oil and gas sector in this country is in turmoil. And he moves on. The gentleman makes that profound pronouncement and moved on to Region 2. That is the level of this debate. That is the difference. Mr. Speaker, while we are modernizing the entire judiciary and building courthouses across the country, and we have recognizedly the most active legislative agenda in the entire Caribbean, the Honorable Roysdale Ford is worried that he has not heard anything from the Law Reform Commission. He has not, he's worried about that, and I will continue. Mr. Speaker, we have distributed 30,000 house lots. 30,000 house lots from 2020 August to now. And in this year, we will deliver 10,000 more. At LBI, we are doing over 1,000 house lots with 450 houses for young professionals. But the Honorable Annette Ferguson complains to us bitterly that the east side is moving quicker than the west side at LBI. The east side of the housing scheme building quicker than the west side. And she brings 2 pictures to show us. She brings 2 pictures to present. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, is working hard with the rest of the government, and we are preparing Guyana to be a regional food hub. We are preparing this country for regional and global food security. That is our vision. The Honorable Vince Roy Jordan complains, lambasted the minister, that 1 black belly sheep barren and 2 black giant fowl alley. That is the level of presentation that they have brought to this house. Mr. Speaker, I can go on. I am not making up these things. You know you can stop me if anything is a lie. I am not going to. But let's continue, Mr. Speaker. But I hope that I have demonstrated vividly to the people of the country that those on that side are completely unfit and unqualified to come anywhere close to a government. Mr. Speaker, apart from the substandard quality of the presentation from the other side, a lot of misinformation have been peddled, which must not be left on the record without a response, and in some cases a repudiation. The Honorable Coretta MacDonald, speaking about the Madia Dorm fire, invoked the Westminster Convention of Ministerial Responsibility, calling for the resignation of the subject minister. Well, an independent commission of inquiry was commissioned by His Excellency the President, and that commission absolved the minister from blame. And that is the national and formal record of this country. But that is not the point I want to make. I want to make the point that in a country like ours, though we inherited our legal system from England, our written constitution has replaced British conventions. Those conventions are therefore not applicable to countries with a written constitution. And our constitution is our supreme law, and it must be obeyed. And Article 106 of our constitution provides in very clear and unequivocal language that when a government is defeated by a no-confidence motion, the president, including the cabinet, must resign and hold elections within 3 months. The coalition government, you on that side, were defeated by a no-confidence motion on the 22nd of December 2018, but squatted in office even after you lost an election until the 2nd of August 2020. Don't bother with British conventions, just obey our constitution. Don't try a veneer of sophistication. Obey the laws of the land. Rather than resign, Mr. Speaker, within 3 months, in compliance with the Constitution, they ran to the court and presented the most clumsy argument ever heard in the British Commonwealth, that 33 is not a majority of 65. The students are from Dolphin. I'm sure they're doing fraction and percentage. And they must know that 33 is a majority, one of the several majorities of a total sum of 65. Well, those on that side didn't know that. Mr. Speaker, we have the Honorable Royce Ford and the Honorable Christopher Jones and the Honorable Shara Duncan delivering to us sermons on democracy, the rule of law, and constitutionality. Mr. Jones quoted adeptly from a United Nations document on democracy, but he obviously omitted to share with us the part of the document that must have said that when you lose an election, you got to demit office. He omitted to share that part with us. When they lost the 2020 elections, they tried repeatedly to rig it in the Ashpins building and they failed. They then tried to rig it at GCOM headquarters and they failed. Then they tried to rig it in this very convention center and they failed. Then they tried in the courts and they failed. For 5 long months, they tried and tried and they failed and they failed. And in the end, the ballots of the people prevailed. And Mr. Speaker, even when they left office, they went with 2 petitions to the court, and they tried and they tried, and they failed and they failed, and the rule of law prevailed. Mr. Speaker, they are lecturing us on constitutionality. The Honorable Cathy Hughes seemed to think that Article 154 that provides for the establishment of a Human Rights Commission is a new invention. She does not know that that provision was there since 2000, and they were in government from 2015 to 2020. Why did you not install it or implement it? Why? That is the double standard for which the Guyanese people will judge them harshly. She stood there and the honorable member spoke about inclusivity in budgets. They passed in 4 years 5 budgets. They want to be consulted. You were in government, you passed 5 budgets. You ever invited us to a single budget consultation? You ever invited us to a single budget consultation? I was here. We never were invited to a single budget consultation. Mr. Speaker, they want to speak about constitutionality. How they want to speak about constitutionality. How can the people of Guyana forget? How can the people of Guyana forget when the judiciary declared that President Granger violated the Constitution when he directed the Public Service Commission and the Police Service Commission to halt promotion of public servants and police officers? How can the people of Guyana forget when the judiciary declared that President Granger violated the Constitution when he revoked 50 leases for rice farmers in Region 5? How can the people of Guyana forget when the judiciary declared that President Granger violated the Constitution when he terminated the lease of the Cherry Jagan Research Institute? How can the people of Guyana forget when the judiciary declared that President Granger violated the Constitution by rejecting 18 nominees of the leader of the opposition and unilaterally appointed James Patterson as the chairman of GCOM? And you come here to lecture us on unconstitutionality. Mr. Speaker, and in that lecture mode, we heard about parliamentary conduct. We heard that they have now become the standard bearers of parliamentary morality and decorum in the National Assembly. Well, Mr. Speaker, who can forget the night of the 29th of December 2021 when we were debating the National Resource Fund Bill? The honorable members on that side, the moral police, as they want to be now. Mr. Speaker, they ignored every one of your admonitions repeatedly when you told them to take their seats. And they descended into the rotunda of the National Assembly. And they whined, and they danced, and they gyrated, and they blew whistle, and they sang, and they do it for the world to see. And not being satisfied. Not being satisfied with that kind of riotous conduct, they then charged towards the mace, broke it, and ran away with it, dragging a staff of this parliament along the floor and calling him a house slave. That is on national television. And if that is not enough, if that was not enough, they then rushed to the court to seek the court to give them approbation and imprimatur. And the court dismissed their case, chased them out of the court, and fined them costs in several $1,000s. And Mr. Speaker, Guyanese across the globe, Guyanese across the country have seen that. They have seen those performances. And you know what they have said? Shame, shame, never AFC,
You've been
APNU
going
again.
extremely
Let's
good.
use the word shame.
Oh, you can't use shame, okay.
Thank you.
Terrible, terrible. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the rule of law and an independent, competent judiciary are the foundations upon which modern society rests. No nation has economically progressed, and no people have socially advanced without these prerequisites. Our government is acutely aware of this reality, and we are assiduously working to create a modern legislative framework and strong legal institutions and systems in order to ensure the achievements of these imperatives. Most of the transformational policies and projects which we are embarking upon require a modern legislative framework to cradle, embrace, and regulate them. Therefore, we are compelled to pursue a most robust legislative agenda to support these initiatives. Our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, is the most paramount and fundamental of our legal instruments. It establishes the philosophical ideals, the economic basis, and the political framework through which we function and by which we are governed. We promise in our manifesto that we will reform this Constitution. We promise to do so through an established mechanism. That mechanism has been established, and it is currently being activated. Mr. Speaker, we have already passed the Law Reform Commission, the Constitutional Reform Commission Act, and we have dispatched letters inviting nominees from the persons who are listed in that act to send nominees. We have invited them to do so. And very shortly, Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President will appoint that commission. Mr. Speaker, before the first quarter of this year, we will conclude the revision of the laws of Guyana. We were supposed to do so by the end of last year, but the volume of the work was huge, and the contractors have asked for an extension of time. Within the first quarter of this year, we will publish the new laws of Guyana. Also, before the first quarter of this year, we will publish the Guyana law reports for the year 2008 to 2020. Mr. Speaker, we are building a new building for the Director of Public Prosecutions at Underneming, Region 2, and that is to be completed and commissioned later this year. That building will constitute an office complex and residential quarters for our officers of the Director of Public Prosecutions Office when they go to prosecute cases on the Essequibo coast. We are building, Mr. Speaker, at Suddy, a new edifice that will house the Deeds and Commercial Registries Authority in Region 2. We are spending approximately 800 million has been budgeted rather for 2024 for a new Deeds and Commercial Registry Authority to be constructed at Esplanade in New Amsterdam. Currently, Mr. Speaker, the operations of the Deeds and Commercial Registry is at a cramped location, sharing with the staff of the High Court Registry in Berbice. Very unsanitary and inconvenient arrangements. We are going to change that. Mr. Speaker, this year, the land registry will be removed from its current location and it will go to a different location that will be more spacious and comfortable to discharge its function. This year also, the year 2025, we will conclude arrangements for the construction of a new headquarters for the Deeds and Commercial Registry in Georgetown. Mr. Speaker, this year also the government of Guyana will donate a portion of land that will accommodate a building for the Guyana Legal Aid Clinic. And that plot of land is at Providence on the east bank of the Demerara. This year we have already commissioned the new Hope and Justice Center at Lusignan, and one will be constructed at Virgin Nugent on the east bank of Essequibo. And this is a joint effort, as you would have heard before, between the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Ministry of Human Services. And it will provide a unique combination of services never provided in this country before. You will have social and counseling services, you will have legal services, you will have medical services, you will have police protection, you will have restorative justice services, and you will have accommodation. And the persons we are providing all these services for are the victims of domestic violence, the victims of trafficking, the victims of sexual violence, and the victims of child labor, the most vulnerable part of our society. We don't come here to speak about who living on cardboard and who not living on cardboard. We are building facilities to accommodate them. In particular, if there is one bias that we have in this government, is towards the vulnerable in our society. Mr. Speaker, the Judicial Service Commission has been appointed, and this year, Mr. Speaker, appointments are going to be made. 6 Justice of Appeal will be appointed. 9 puisne judges will be appointed to the High Court. 2 Commissioners of Title will be appointed, and 10 magistrates will be appointed, bringing the total magistrates to 29, and new posts have also been created to accommodate for the large intake of cases. Mr. Speaker, on August 16, 2023, a $263 million magistrates court was commissioned at Vigilance on the east coast of Demerara. On August 18, 2023, the sod was turned for the construction of a $303.9 million magistrates court at Timeri East Bank Demerara, the first time in the history of our country, a court will be constructed at Timeri on the east bank of Demerara. On August the 21st, 2023, the sod was turned for the construction of a new $388.8 million magistrates court at Friendship on the east bank of Demerara. Again, the first time in the history of our country, a court is being established at Friendship on the east bank of Demerara. On October the 2nd, 2023, the sod was turned for the construction of a $178.2 million magistrates court at Anna Regina, Region 2. We have established also a drug court in this country for the first time. And Mr. Speaker, on December the 6th, 2023, a pilot case management system was launched for the magistrate court system. Once that pilot works, then we will have e-filing and e-case management across the magistrates court of our country. That, Mr. Speaker, will bring speed, will bring modernity, and will bring a revolution to that sector. Mr. Speaker, we are reviewing in strengthening our criminal justice system. We are working on a number of important initiatives, sentencing guidelines. You would have heard a lot of public commentary about the type and varying sentences handed down by our legal tribunals. Well, these sentencing guidelines are expected to bring uniformity and consistency in that regard. We will review the Sexual Offences Act. We will have new legislation that will provide for the trial of certain criminal matters by a judge only and without a jury. We are drafting a completely new Evidence Act. Our Evidence Act is a 1898 legislation. And with all the transformation taking place, that act simply can't govern the evidential tapestry of our jurisprudence anymore. Mr. Speaker, this year we will unfold the Restorative Justice Project in a railway. I held discussions with my distinguished colleague, my sister, the Honorable Vindhya Prasad, and we are going to twin the Restorative Justice Project with the Probation Department. The Probation Department is already located across every magisterial district in the country. They have their own facilities, they have their own edifices, and they also have an integrated and harmonious systematic relationship with the judiciary. And if we can take advantage of that established infrastructure and just add the restorative justice officers to it, then we will kickstart a restorative justice project in a real way. Mr. Speaker, there are so many other important things that I have to speak about. We have performed well in our assessment in relation to anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. And Mr. Speaker, we have dozens of new bills that we are working on. We have to improve and modernize our corporate structure. We have to build the legal capability to provide that crucial role as the breadbasket of the Caribbean. And we are working on legislation to improve our agriculture sector and our capacity to export food. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying to this National Assembly that this budget of 2024 is yet another installment of our plan to create a modern Guyana and to make the Guyanese citizens first-class citizens of this world. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.